When COVID-19 broke out, it triggered varying responses from the governments across the globe, which were a combination of laws, policies, physical restriction of movement, and a range of technologies to trace the spread of infections. Key to these measures was the aspect of contact tracing, which is a multi-step process that identifies the source of the case's infection as well as the persons who the case has been in contact with while infectious for the purpose of preventing further transmission. This was done manually and also through the use of tracking applications. Zimbabwe launched a contact tracing application called Zimco Safe app, which contained a COVID-19 screening tool, information about vaccination and testing centers, as well as an SMS portal to contact the Ministry of Health and tracing teams. Any information collected through this app was uploaded to a centralized database controlled by the Ministry of Health, but there is no publicly available information about which other parties have access to this information. In South Africa, the country's Department of Health launched the COVID-19 Alert SA app, which offers news, information, a risk assessment tool, and COVID-19 test results, which are accessible via either SMS or WhatsApp. The app's primary purpose was to alert users when they had come into contact with someone who had recently tested positive for COVID-19. According to the South African Ministry of Health, the app uses Bluetooth signals to exchange random codes with other COVID Alert SA app users. This happens when their smartphones are within 2 meters of each other for more than 15 minutes. These codes that are then stored in a log on each phone for 2 weeks. When an app user tests positive for COVID-19, they can report this information on the app anonymously. Their device then uploads all of the random codes that it has on record for the past 2 weeks to the exposure notification server. The server then sends these codes to the other users of the app. If there is a match, the app notifies the user who has been in contact with the infected person. Similarly, Ghana's Ministry of Communication also announced the launch of an app called GH COVID-19 Tracker. It feeds a system with collected data that is accessed by the Ghana Education Service, the Ghana Health Service, and the COVID-19 Presidential Task Force at districts, regional, and national levels. The app's website states that the app is designed to meet the requirements of the Ghanaian Data Protection Act of 2012. A major privacy concern is the fear that the contact tracing apps will collect large amounts of user information, including data that is not necessary for contact tracing purposes. For example, real-time location data. A discovery that an app collects more information than necessary will no doubt erode the trust that the users place on the app, which is another potential problem since users generally do not use technologies they do not trust. COVID-19 tracking apps that collect more information than necessary inevitably become surveillance tools that can be used by governments to unjustifiably spy on the movements of citizens and targeted members of the population. It is therefore very important to introduce adequate privacy and data protection frameworks that clearly set out the type of data that may be collected by COVID-19 tracking technologies, as well as how this data is processed, stored, and disposed of. There is also a need to ensure that the users of COVID-19 tracking technologies are informed as much as possible about the data that tracking apps will collect and which parties and entities will have access to this collected data. This will also ensure that the users give informed and legitimate consent to have their information collected and processed. Much of the information that is collected and processed by COVID-19 tracking apps is most likely going to be health information. Health information contains biometric information, which is a category of special data that deserves an extra layer of protection, hence the call for strong regulatory frameworks on how this data is processed. Another privacy consideration relates to the creation and maintenance of storage databases, where the information collected either through manual contact tracing methods or through contact tracing apps is stored and accessed from. The creation of databases that contain personal information and special categories of data like biometric information attracts bad actors that may target such databases for their financial gain. Such databases must be secure and set up in a way that preserves the accuracy and integrity of the information stored on them.